Hey everyone, I'm going to be doing my presentation on Islam and specifically how to counsel Muslim clients. This is a video on preconceptions about Islam, and I would love it if you guys could click on the link uh, below the video and watch this first before finishing the rest of this video. I couldn't include it in my presentation. Couldn't figure that out. So, anyways, I hope you enjoy it. Here's some of the demographics about Islam, and there are 3 to 7 million Muslims who live in the US. It's made up of three groups: immigrants, American converts, and the children from the first two. And within this, there's several ethnic and cultural groups that exist. So all of the things that I'm going to share with you are basically like the overview and the generalizations, but they may not apply to everyone. In terms of religious beliefs, Islam is defined as to submit and surrender your will to Almighty God. The purpose of Islam is to save humanity from anguish, leading them to the hereafter and bringing humans back to their original state, which is of essentially at peace. Islamic people like to talk about their religion in terms of commonalities with Christians, specifically referencing Adam and Eve, the prophets, the Hebrew writings, Jesus as another accepted prophet. So all of that is common history. The difference between how Muslims and how Christians see Jesus is that Muslims see him as not divine but just a great prophet. Allah is the Islamic word for God, for Almighty God, and that is who Muslims worship. He has no gender, so can't even really say he, it's just Allah has no gender, no plurality. So whereas the God that Christians worship is seen as a trinity, Allah is seen as a unity, and he has, or I guess again can't say he, but Allah has 99 attributes and is the only God. Muhammad is the last prophet that was chosen 1400 years ago by the angel Gabriel, and he is seen as the perfect example to Muslim people, and he wrote down the words of Allah and gave them to the people. The Quran and the Sunnah Hadith are the two holy books of Islam, and they are giving people encouragement on guidance how to live, everyday social life, marriage, personal rights, pretty much everything that you can think of is in these two books. And the only people who are able to interpret this would be imams and religious leaders. The 5 to 6 basic principles in Islam are dependent on the scholar who interprets them, and these principles are worked out in the pillars of Islam. And so the basic principles are belief in Allah, belief in the prophets, belief in angels, belief in the revealed books, and belief in the day of judgment and resurrection. The sixth one there is belief in predestination, and these are worked out and declared outwardly through the Shahada, which is the declaration of faith, 5 prayers each day, an offering that's calculated yearly, Ramadan, which is a time of fasting, and also a pilgrimage to Mecca. And all of these are only if you are able to physically, financially, and yes, so physically and financially. The strengths that Islam brings is very largely in their community and in the peace that the members experience. It's a life of worship and kindness, and they believe that they will be rewarded in the afterlife. So that's a huge strength for them. As the video kind of showed, Sharia is actually just the law of Allah on what is halal or lawful and what is haram or unlawful. So it covers all the topics that are included in the holy books, and it's the basic law of how they are to live. Beautiful misconception is that women are actually treated very highly for the most part. And there's a beautiful quote that Annie Besant in the 1930s observed. She said, "It is only in the last 20 years that Christian England has recognized the rights of women to property, while Islam has allowed this right from all times. It is a slander to say that Islam preaches that women have no souls." In terms of cultural values, Islam holds there's two groups, 25% follow more Hindu traditions and values, and 23% more Islamic, and the handout says more about that. But there are specific cultural values around family, around marriage, community, and education. And so in marriage, there's hierarchical values in terms of gender roles, community. It's seen as like if you're a part of the community, you're strong. If you're outside, you're weak. Something to note is there's differences in divorce in if divorce is allowed between the two communities, and the handouts will go into that more. Some of the unique tensions that Muslim people face are the balancing of their cultural and religious values. So as we saw, sometimes those can differ, and the amount of weight if they feel like they've made a mistake is twice as much because they have the shame from the cultural and the religious values. Since 9/11, there's been discrimination to the point where they have to defend their religious fervor and their basic rights. There's a lack of support for immigrants now that they're living in the States because they don't have the childcare, they don't have the emotional support, and just the friendship that they had when they were in their previous country. And while immigrants will have more adjustment concerns, American Muslims will have more integration concerns. Um, Again, this is reflected in the conflicting worldviews between parents and children. There's barriers such as language, accent, dress style, skin color, and there's a stigma with mental illness because it's believed to be caused by evil spirits by some Muslims. So now for the big chunk, the most important part, which is the clinical suggestions. And I got to spend some time interviewing imam, which is the religious leader, and just asking him some questions. And he had some very good suggestions, which I elaborate more in the handout. So essentially, creating, looking into your own self-awareness and to see where your prejudice might be is the most important thing. And because what we want to do is we want to create a safe space where Muslim people feel that they are able to be honest and welcomed. And ways to do that are to incorporate a relational style that's very honest. So if they know your values, then they feel like you will respect theirs. So since all their concerns are spoken into by their religion, they need to know their counselor is open minded and won't try to change their beliefs. So, religious values should be part of the counseling. Quran and Sunnah Hadith, which are the traditions that we talked about, the books, they play a central role when families face difficulties. Um, in order to in order to connect with a Muslim client, you can reframe the issue in a positive light so that they don't feel like you are making them less than you. You can collaborate by inviting them to educate you. You can win their heart by asking them how to pronounce their name, by learning how to say, "How are you?" in their language, by complimenting a woman on her dress style if you are another woman. That's very important for them to know that you like them. Make sure that you can assess the difference between their cultural and religious identity so they can kind of sort out how those two things are playing a role in the struggles that they're facing, and then they can choose which values they want to prioritize. Use the phrase, "Are you experiencing emotional stress?" rather than mental illness to avoid the stigma of in the term mental illness. Some models that combine that work very well for working with Muslims are cognitive therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, family therapy, feminist therapy, and existential humanistic therapy. So some of the last clinical suggestions are specifically around gender concerns. For a female counselor, when she's meeting a male client, she should not offer to shake her hand unless he offers first, depending on his degree of acculturation. It is considered, for a Muslim man, he becomes impure when he touches a woman's hand, and that is considered to separate him from God, and so that'll create more harm than good. It's very important as well, if it's a male counselor, that he refer the female client to a female counselor and that he not touch her body again, so not reaching out to shake her hand, which it's kind of funny because this picture that I included literally has a Muslim woman shaking the hand of a man here. So we can either assume that she does not care so much about uh, the struggle around touching her body, or maybe he does not hold to the value of um, the purity that can be taken away if he touches a woman. So it all depends. Again, like these are all generalizations, and you have to take them and see what your client believes about this. Eye contact. Sometimes, if they're holding to their Muslim values, they will believe that eye contact between a woman and a man can lead to sin, and so they will not do that. So a counselor should be very careful not to misinterpret that as the Muslim individual having low self-esteem. Rely on imams and traditional healers. Ask them for wisdom. The imam that I was talking to said, we have marital problems where the wife will go to a counselor and ask for advice, and she might use the more Western theories to increase assertiveness training and get her to leave her husband, but in the long run, that causes more harm than good. Instead, utilize the utilize the system in her community where, first of all, if a couple is having trouble, they'll sit down, they'll advise each other, they'll listen to each other, talk to each other. If that doesn't work, then they each get to choose, like, a man from his side, a woman from her side, who sit down with the couple, counsel them. If that doesn't work, then they go to the imams and the religious leaders. And if that doesn't work, the religious leaders, like, support them in divorce in order to so that their lives can be more peaceful. Um, Go to the mosque for resources. They have utilizes the client theory of change. Like, perhaps this person believes that part of mental illness is caused by spirits, and so the mosque does offer things like exorcism and counsel for individuals in all concerns. And so you can include the imam in the sessions and ask for wisdom with the client's permission. The most important thing that in the research that it talked about was counsel. The healing of one's heart is seen as critical to ensuring a peaceful life without any emotional troubles or conflicts. There are ways that this is done depending on how the person sees their theory of change, and so figure out what is it that they believe will bring them peace, and let peace be the focus. That is what I wanted to share with you, and I hope you enjoy all the rest of these slideshow presentations and movies.